Hello, I'm John and I'm here at the Schiffer Book Farm. It's the first week of a new year. Happy New Year to you, and I have an advance copy of a new catalog. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the new books that are coming in the spring-summer 2026 season. And I'll show you the front cover here so you can have a look. Along with table of contents. And these books are in a pub date order, by the way. First one is a new Legends of Warfare book about the USS Nevada. The USS Nevada was an American battleship, served in both World Wars, sunk at Pearl Harbor, raised and returned to service. They tried to sink it again with an atomic bomb during Operation Crossroads, and that still didn't work, and then they used it as target practice. And then it finally sunk. Next, another Legends of Warfare book on a World War II ship. This is the USS Yorktown CV-10. I believe this is the second of the Yorktowns. The first one was sunk Midway. And CV-10 survived the war, and you can go see it, go on board at Patriots Point near Charleston, South Carolina. Then we have a Legends of Flight book. This one's on the DC-8, one of the first large jet airliners made in the United States. Then we have Spies in Saigon. This one is about CIA covert operations in French Indochina and South Vietnam from 1950 to 1963. So that's the reason we have to have both French Indochina and South Vietnam is that this is during the time in history where the French are still trying to hold on to Vietnam as a colony. And it's in 1950 when the CIA installs its first chief of station in Saigon. That's during the war with the French and the communists. And then that first guy, the first chief of station, was named Paul Springer. And the author, Jim Bevel, is the son-in-law of Paul Springer. And the Springer family, they actually had to sue the CIA to get them to release Paul Springer's personnel file. That was just recently, about less than 10 years ago, that they were able to get the personnel file. So this is relatively recently declassified material. And then this brings you right up to the point in 1963 when Diem is assassinated, and he was the president of South Vietnam, and that assassination was really orchestrated by the CIA. So there's lots of covert operations in this book, espionage, and gives a real insight into the sort of the build up into what became the Vietnam, technically not war. Up next we have the Boeing 777. This is a large format book. It's not a Legends of Flight book. This covers a lot about how the 777 was designed and built, and then of course describing it in technical detail and operation, etc. It's co-authored by Dan Dornsife, who we've worked with on several books previously about airliners, and Alan Mullally. And Alan was in charge of the engineering team that designed the 777. Then he went on to become the CEO of Boeing, and then the CEO of Ford Motor Company as well. With him and his network, the author Dan Dornsife, the co-author Dan Dornsife, was able to get a lot of access to individuals who worked on the program and a lot of new and fascinating stories. This book is heavily illustrated as well. Following that, we have Combat Historian by Richard Stewart. Richard was the chief historian of the U.S. Army, and before that, he was the command historian for U.S. Army Special Operations. And in that capacity, he deployed with Special Operations all over the world to Mogadishu. He was there for Black Hawk Down, and he went to Kosovo. He went to Iraq and Kuwait for Desert Storm, Afghanistan, etc. And so this is a book. It's a history of those operations, but then it also is a first-person account of somebody who had a really specific role within the military. He was a historian, and it provides a lot of insight into what it entails to be a combat historian and how the U.S. Army records and tells its history. And then we have the Africa ship. This is Ludwig Bockholt, Zeppelin L-59, and the Most Daring Rescue Mission of World War I. And this is by Dominic Etzold, who we worked with previously on Reaping the Whirlwind, a book about World War I submarines. And the Africa ship is a reference to an airship. And the Germans had their East Africa colony, which is roughly in what's now Tanzania. And they had an army down there during World War I, and they were doing pretty well in their battles, but they couldn't be resupplied. The Royal Navy blockaded Africa, and all the railway lines were cut by the Allied ground forces. So the Germans came up with a pretty desperate attempt to resupply this army via airship. Their idea was to fly this Zeppelin L-59 from a Navy base in Bulgaria all the way to the East Africa colony. And they didn't make it. I won't ruin the story, but this is really an incredible airship story, a rescue mission story, and just generally good World War I history. Then we have Submarines of the Russian and Soviet Navies, and this is 1946 to 2026, so really the post-war period, and it's been updated. The author Norman Polmar has authored several other books on Russian and Soviet submarines, and this book kind of combines and revises and updates a lot of that material to be the definitive book on Russian submarines. It's going to be 8.5 by 11, about 100 images, and quite a bit of text. So very detailed sort of historical and operational history, not just a picture book, not just a technical description. Then we have Apollo 8 in photographs. This is part of the Apollo Photo Archive series. And this book came in very early. I have a copy right here. This one's available now. And I believe I've done a video describing that book in more detail, so I won't talk about it at length here. Then we have one last Legends of Warfare book. This is the USS California. Like Nevada, this is an American battleship that was sunk at Pearl Harbor, then raised and refit and returned to duty. And then we have some not strictly military history books here at the end. We have Quilts of Valor, a second edition of that book. This is really a fantastic organization that creates quilts to support our veterans. Then we have some car books. We have a Formula One book, Lords of Speed, and a book about Audi's historic vehicle collection. And finally, a motorcycle book about the Indian Motorcycle Company of Gilroy, California. So that's it for the front list. You can find a link in the description to a digital version of this catalog. And the print catalogs will be here very shortly. They'll be going in the mail, I think, around the end of January, and you can order a copy through our website. Thank you very much for checking out this video, and Happy New Year again. Cheers.